Hey. Okay. That was horrible, wasn't it? Okay. We are going. I just wanted to get that one out of the way because I knew it would be bad. I'm ready. Quinn blinked, surprised by my declaration. We can talk about this. We will, but your sister's waiting. Let's go. Okay, sure. Quinn and I got into the car and he pulled onto the road. Lilith immediately started talking Quinn's ear off about her excitement for the movie and various things that had happened over the last year. I was quiet, my mind still spinning over the news. I remembered what my brother said about Quinn's sealed court records too. I was concerned and worried, but I didn't think Quinn was a threat. Brandon wouldn't let me stay if there was any doubt whatsoever, and I trusted his judgment. Plus, Quinn was so kind and supportive. I enjoyed his company. For Quinn to do something awful like that, and for my brother to disregard it so easily, it must have been a complicated situation. Despite knowing all that, I still fretted over it. I left home to get away from murderers, only to discover my roommate was also one. So it was either definitely Quinn who did it, or Lilith did it as like an accident or something, and Quinn took the blame for it. I don't know. I do think Quinn probably did it, though. I feared tolerating that darkness in my life. It had been so hard to escape, and I still wasn't completely free. I was startled out of my thoughts by Quinn's hand resting on mine. He smiled at me, but there was concern in his eyes. I'll tell you everything, I promise. The movie was a cartoon comedy, a pleasant stress relief. Afterwards, Quinn took us shopping to look for a new church dress for Lilith. That took an hour because of their specific requirements. The dress could have no sequins, branding, words, or lace. The skirt had to be knee-length or longer and with a conservative neckline. In the end, they picked a cute pastel pink dress that was one size too large, so she could grow into it without having to resort to another hand-me-down for a couple of years. Lilith's excitement over the dress was extreme. Quinn explained she never owned anything brand new. Since I lacked a birthday present for her, I bought her a pair of shoes to go with the dress. Lilith had tears in her eyes as she put them on and viewed herself in a mirror. On the way back home, we picked up secret milkshakes as a treat before dinner. When we returned to the house, the sun was setting. Lilith hugged us both, still bouncing with excitement, and ran inside to show her mother the new dress. Do you think your mother will like the dress? Yeah, the colour is pale enough to not stand out, plus the length and style meet her standards. Shouldn't be any problem. So excited. Yep, she's the youngest, so she's lived her entire life in second or third hand clothes. None of us ever had the money for stuff like clothes. This is the first year I've been able to buy her more than a movie ticket. I can tell she appreciates it. She means a lot to you, doesn't she? Yeah, Lily's a lot like you, actually. Like me? She doesn't judge people. She listens. She has empathy. When I first asked her to call me Quinn, she said, "That's such a cool name. Can I have a nickname too?" So you started calling her Lily? Yep. Listen, about what my brother said earlier. Quinn, Valkii, dinner's ready. You gotta hurry or there won't be any food left. Trying to get back into the voice. I got it for a little while, I feel like, and then it's gone again because I was in emotional distress. Quinn grumbled under his breath as Lilith yelled from the front door and we made our way inside. Dinner was both chaos and awkward. There were 7 siblings, Quinn's mother and her 3rd husband, and a bunch of children between newborn and 10. The 11 adults were tightly crammed around a table made for 8 people. Their mother led a prayer, and then the talking, arguing, playing, lecturing, disciplining, and child wrangling all began. There was never a moment of silence, except for myself and Quinn. It felt like we weren't even there for most of the meal, except for when Lilith spoke to us. All the adults ignored us, and we were constantly in the way of all the children. As I sat there eating, I came to realize just how awful this felt. Outside of Lily, it truly seemed like no one cared we were here. No one tried to catch up with Quinn or cared enough to introduce themselves to me. When we finished eating, Quinn collected a handful of plates and headed towards the kitchen. After a few moments, I felt too awkward to stay, so I followed him. He was washing dishes. I grabbed a clean towel and joined Quinn at the sink and began drying the dishes. You don't like noise, right? It's not that I don't like it, I'm just not used to it. My house was always cryptically quiet. Can't even imagine. There was never a moment's peace in this house. When I first moved out, the silence drove me fucking insane. I wasn't used to being alone with my thoughts so much. How old were you when you left? 16, almost 17. Wow, that early? Yeah, never mind. I wanted to push the topic, but it felt like unsteady ground, so I changed the subject. Do all these children live here too? Not all of them, no. Matthew moved in with his wife's family when they got married, and their kids live there. I think a couple of pipsqueaks are friends visiting to play. John's kids live with their mother. He never got married, and they aren't on good terms. Mary lives with her husband and kids in their own house, so by mother's standards, she's doing the best out of everyone. Well, at least they all seem to get along with each other. Maybe their dislike of me unites them? Huh. This might be a weird question. What does your mother think you should be doing with your life? That was a hard question to answer without bringing up the nature of our family. If my mother had it her way, I'd have an arranged marriage to a rich and powerful man. Yikes. How did you avoid that? My brother. He's the golden child who could do no wrong, and whatever he wants, he gets. We used to be close. Close like Lily and I? A lot closer than that. We both had difficult childhoods. We relied on each other to get through it. Quinn nodded solemnly, not pressing the matter further. I know things are strained between you two, and he seems like a bit of a creep, honestly, but it's also obvious that he cares about you a lot. He does. It's just things are complicated now. I know I can rely on him and trust him, and I do, but our relationship with each other is extremely unhealthy and codependent, I guess. Where we are right now, I think the healthiest thing for us is to be apart. How is he handling that? Not well. He's lashing out a lot, and it seems to only be getting worse. I'm sure he's angry and hurt, maybe even depressed and feeling betrayed, but something had to change. Something had to change. Yeah, I know that feeling. Quinn, will you play soccer with us? See, I've lost it. Quinn dried his hands and turned to look at his sister, who had just run into the room. He smiled half-heartedly. Sure, Lily. Somehow, I ended up sitting on the porch beside Quinn's mother as the older kids and Quinn played soccer. She served us large glasses of sweet iced tea, a southern staple. I don't think I ever caught your name, ma'am. Oh, yes, my apologies. It's Gabriella. Nice to meet you. You too, sugar. I'm so glad Noah finally has a nice girl with him. Tell me, dearie, has he settled down any? I do hope he's still not playing dress-up. I held my tongue for a moment, unsure of how to respond. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to make things harder for Quinn. Luckily, Gabriella continued talking without waiting for an answer. He's always been such a trouble boy, ever since he was a child. I worry about him so much. I don't think you need to worry. He's doing well, and he seems happy at home. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Tell me, does he have friends out there too? Yes, ma'am. He's very social. Wonderful. He's pulled himself so far away from this family, and I kept trying to tell him that family is everything in the end, but the others hold that awful grudge and just can't seem to let it go. I still didn't know the subject of that grudge, and it didn't feel right to pry without talking to Quinn about it first. Do you know why they won't let it go? After Quinn left home, things got a lot harder without my second husband around. I didn't find my third husband until 10 years later. You see, I've had problems with my health since I was a little girl. My breathing ain't so good, and the doctors say my blood pressure ain't good either. We can't afford those fancy medications or the like out there, so I just handled it on my own. But anywho, my last husband was a wonderful man. He had one of them good-paying jobs. He preached at church every Sunday and coached those sports teams at the school. Everyone adored him. We were comfortable, but when he passed, I couldn't work and Quinn left home. We had to skip meals, rely on the church for help, and the older ones found jobs to put food on the table. I guess they had to grow up pretty fast. Yes, sadly they did, and they blamed Noah for all their problems. Things may have been easier if he'd stayed around, but I kept telling them, God says to forgive. Noah had his own struggles, being a special boy, different from everyone else. I wish I could have helped him with that, but God gave Noah a mountain of challenges to face. As I listened to her talk, I worried and wondered, did Quinn really kill that man that everyone loved and admired so much? Why? I could understand the build-up resentment of his brothers. They must have felt like Quinn stole their lives and futures, then turned his back on all of them. They sure are having fun out there. I glanced up to see Quinn running across the yard, cheering the other kids on and smiling ear to ear. I was grateful the grudges weren't passed on to the children. All of them were playing well together, shouting and laughing into the night, and Quinn looked happy. Eventually, the hour grew late, and all the children were corralled by the parents and taken away for bedtime. Quinn was sweating and smiling as he did his best to assist, despite the children's tired protests. Once they were all taken away, he sat beside me, still breathing heavily. That looked like fun. You could have played, you know. I enjoyed watching. I don't have that kind of energy. Quinn laughed and wiped the sweat from his face with his shirt. It's hard to keep up, I admit. Plans for tomorrow. It's gonna be busy too. Lily wants to go to a museum, roller skating, and he glanced around, ensuring we were alone. I'm taking her to the doctor for birth control. It's nothing new. I do it every year. Birth control at... What is she, 14? Quinn frowned but nodded. You saw how many kids were out there, right? How many siblings I have? After Lily was born, Mother had to have a hysterectomy for medical reasons. If she hadn't done that, there'd be even more of us. One of my sisters gave birth at 13. Wow, why do they... Deaf, dumb, and blind? There's no sex ed in these parts. Condoms and birth control are considered sins. Teenage boys believe every myth out there about avoiding pregnancy, all of them wrong. Girls out here think their entire purpose in life is to find a good husband and pop out kids. Quinn sighed heavily, slumping down in the chair. Maybe I sound smug and full of myself. If that's what they want, great, right? But the problem is they don't understand there are other options. They don't see the value in education. Some of them don't even believe in science. I've talked to people around here that think even elementary school is a waste of time because their kids should be working on the farm once they can walk. And you don't want that for Lily. Lily doesn't want that. I've never talked to her about this stuff. Since she was little, she was interested in science. If someone asked her what she wanted to be when she was older, she'd say a scientist, doctor, or astronaut. She still wants that. Quinn was getting upset as he talked, and he paused to take a breath. When she was 12, she called me crying hysterically. She'd asked some administrator at school about how to go to college, and they told her she was too pretty to waste her life in school. When I answered the phone, the first thing she said was, "If I cut off all my hair, will that make me ugly?" Oh dear. I've always told her she could do anything. I'd help her in every way I could. I asked Mama if I could take her to live with me, but Mama said, no, I'm a godless heathen, and I can't raise a child like that. That's awful. I'm still going to help her. I've been encouraging her to study hard, and her grades are great. With that in her background, I think she can get a bunch of scholarships. When she's 18, she can either move in with me or into a dorm, whatever she wants. I'll help her with all the applications, but I don't know if I did the right thing. I told her that one way she could ruin her future was getting pregnant, so I suggested she go on birth control. I didn't make it conditional or anything. I made sure she understood it was her choice and she could stop whenever she wanted. That sounds okay to me. I don't know if it would ruin her life, but it would certainly make everything much harder. You don't understand. It would be worse than that. If she got pregnant, Mama would push her to marry, and everyone would tell her to give up. I've had to convince her to keep pursuing it many times. She wants to, but again, she's never seen it herself. She's not sure it's possible. I'm the only one who gives her any hope because I left home and went to college all on my own. She admires you. She does, but even that is hard for her. Everyone else here hates me. They tell her it's a mistake to even talk to me or that I'm leading her on an ungodly path. Well, for what it's worth, I think she's lucky to have you. Quinn smiled at me. I could see relief in his eyes. Thank you for that. If you think it's the right thing to do, I feel a lot more confident about it. I'm no saint, but I think if she wants to study science, she should. There's nothing sinful about education, nor does it ever go to waste. Once she's graduated, she can decide if she wants to work in that field or be a housewife. Well said. Next time she calls doubting herself, I just might have her talk to you. Okay, if you think that would help. It just might. You are a woman going to college yourself, after all. It might feel more real if it comes from you. Anyway, there's a more important conversation we need to have right now. I'd been nervous about this, but I needed to know. What did Matthew say? You killed your stepfather. Yep, that's Matthew. Straight to the fucking point. Is it true? Yes, it's true. We were both quiet for a long moment. I had been hoping Quinn would continue by claiming it was an accident or a terrible misunderstanding or anything, but he didn't. Do you want to hear what happened? Yes, I think I should. Okay. My biological father died from illness and mother remarried pretty quickly. His name was Jonathan. Great guy on paper, involved with the church, coaches Little League or whatever, makes good money. Overall, on the outside, he seemed like a great supportive husband. Seemed like. Mama was blind, and I was a 12-year-old gay girly boy. Jonathan started with me. Still gives me nightmares. I assume Mama asked him to fix me or toughen me up somehow. He took me out alone on a fishing trip. To make a disgusting story short, I was told I deserved it, and that kind of treatment was what freaks and got. Oh no. Did you tell anyone? Not at first. He threatened me. When it kept happening, I eventually tried to tell Mama, but she wouldn't hear it. He beat me and me again after he found out I talked. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't want to get into any more detail, but it continued for a few years, until I guess he lost interest. When Mary started to grow, his interest turned to her. Her eldest child is his child, though no one will admit it. Hannah somehow got overlooked. They were only a year apart. I can only guess it was easier for him to keep one kid silent instead of two. Or maybe Hannah not being abused was his way of proving he wasn't doing anything wrong. I don't know. Adam was born next a couple of years later. Jonathan had no interest in any of the boys. They were all spared. It was just Mary and me until Lily. Oh God. I was 16 and Lily was 5 years old. 5. I can't even. He took a heavy, shaky breath. I reached out and held his hand, and he held mine tightly. I walked in on him. And Lily was... There was no mistaking what the fuck was going on. Everyone over and over told me I must have misunderstood. I must have confused what I saw, or I imagined the entire fucking thing. No, I knew exactly what he was doing. Quinn's tears had turned angry and his hands were trembling. He looked out into the night, staring into the void. He... fucking monster. He was trying to put it inside of her. She was 5, and motherfucking God, Valkii, Lily was so fucking small in his giant hands. She was so small and confused, and she saw me approaching over his shoulder, and her eyes were scared and cheery, and she was telling him it hurt over and over again. I knew he was abusing Mary, but I never saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw the aftermath. I saw her crying. I listened to her, and I helped her clean up and function the days after it happened. But when I saw it for myself, with that little baby girl in his hand, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what happened to me. I didn't think. I just reacted. I grabbed a metal vase sitting on one of the dressers in the room, and with every ounce of strength I had, I beat him over the head. He fell to the floor, dropping Lily in the protest, and she started screaming, which just drove me even further. I slammed that vase into the back of his skull over 20 times. I don't even know when he stopped moving. There was blood everywhere, all over me, all over Lily, all over the floor, and the vase and the curtains and the furniture. And I support his actions. In his shoes, well, let's just say I would have done a lot worse. Oh. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, he would have done a lot worse if that was Valkii in his shoes. With his explanation, I suddenly understood what my brother had meant during his last visit. In Brandon's eyes, Jonathan had been given a merciful death. Everything after that was a fucking blur. I barely remember. The cops came, I was questioned on and off for days. Then they accused me of murder, and I was locked up for a while. I had to go to court, and the only reason I didn't get convicted was because Mary testified about her abuse, even though she didn't want to. Does Lily remember? Barely, which is a blessing. She says she remembers that he was hurting her and that I saved her, but not the details of what happened. But, I don't know, she could be lying to make me feel better about it. Does she know it happened to you and Mary? I told Lily after that he hurts us too, but no specifics. Mary refuses to talk about it now. She just wanted to move on, which I understand. I was so grateful she testified. I couldn't ask any more of her. I understand. Is that why you left home? Because of the memories? Partially, yes. But it was worse than that. The entire town thought I got away with murder. They didn't believe Jonathan would do something so horrific. Oh no. Yeah, not only did my siblings hate me because we were in poverty, but the entire town hated me too. I was a walking target. I lost all my friends in school. People spray-painted murderer across our house. I got so many death threats that I was afraid someone would set fire to the house and kill my entire family. The one thing that made the situation just that much more ridiculous was I couldn't find a job. No one would hire the infamous town girly boy heathen murderer. My brothers bitch at me because I didn't stick around and help them. How could I help them if no one would hire me? If no one would even tolerate being in the same room as me? What was I supposed to do? It's okay, I understand. I was a drain on the entire family just by existing. Leaving was the best thing I could do for everyone. Quinn was terribly upset, and I felt awful for making him revisit that trauma. I reached over and hugged him tightly, and he hugged me back. After a few moments, he calmed down. He sat back and wiped the tears forming in his eyes. Sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional. I would be emotional too. That's a horrible experience. Was I wrong, Valkii? Did I murder him? Was what I did wrong? What the fuck? This is a horrible oh my god, this really sucks. Is Quinn a murderer? Alright. We're gonna go with no, which I hate doing, but the going yes takes us to the next particles unlock, which we're just going to do last, because it just happened to work out that way. Is Quinn a murderer? No. Maybe by definition you might be, but I understand why you did what you did, and I can't blame you for your actions. My brother would have done so much worse, and what Jonathan did was unforgivable. Quinn stared at me in silence for a few moments, and then suddenly and unexpectedly he burst into tears. He bent forward, elbows resting on his knees, and sobbed into his hands. I was so stunned by it that I sat frozen for a few moments. When I came to my senses, I got up and knelt in front of his chair, looking up at him. Quinn? What's wrong? I didn't mean to upset you more. He shook his head rapidly, still crying, and leaned down to wrap his arms around me. I returned the embrace tightly. His entire body trembled, and I gently rubbed his back as I held him. His crying was so intense that I began to realize just how much suffering this question caused him. This uncertainty weighed him down for nearly a decade. He truly had no idea if he'd done the right thing, but knowing what would have happened if he'd done nothing would have only caused him another kind of tremendous guilt. It was a horrible situation. I also realized how much Quinn trusted my opinion, and that made me feel awkward given how little he knew of my own history, but I was glad I could give him some relief and comfort. God, I'm so sorry. I've been such a mess since we got here. I smiled up at him and wiped some tears off his cheek. It's okay, but it's good we talked about this. He laughed awkwardly, then sighed and looked out into the night. Thank you for coming with me. This is easily the best trip I've ever had here. Really? It doesn't seem like much has happened. Yeah, and that's exactly why. No one wanted to embarrass themselves or air our dirty laundry in front of a guest. They've all just left us alone. I thought that was very sad, but the alternative seemed much worse. I bet you're tired. We have to get up early for Lily's appointment tomorrow too. We should get ready for bed. When I stay here, I always sleep in the kids' treehouse near the woods. Treehouse? Why? Well, honestly, it's nicer, it's quieter, there's more room, and the weather is always good this time of year. The guest room in the house is the laundry room since the machines broke decades ago. There's a rough single cot and some itchy blankets in there. If you'd prefer your own room, you can sleep there. I like the treehouse myself. I didn't like the idea of staying alone in such a busy, hostile house, and I also wasn't sure it was a good idea to leave Quinn alone with his thoughts after revisiting those terrible childhood memories. I'll stay in the treehouse with you if you're comfortable with it. Really? Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. Let me grab a quick shower and we can head over. Let me just see where this leads us. Oh, okay. Quinn showered and changed into his pajamas. I changed clothes in the small guest bath. Afterwards, Quinn led me into the woods, carrying some spare blankets and a battery-powered lantern. The treehouse was in a big tree on the edge of the woods. We had to climb a ladder to enter through the floor. Inside were lots of toys, books, trash, and snacks, along with 3 thick sleeping bags and pillows spread out everywhere. It was quite a large space, much bigger than I anticipated. We spent some time tidying up, then Quinn laid out one of the sleeping bags flat over the floor for extra padding, and spread out the other 2 on top side by side. I collected a few pillows for us both, and we settled in for the night. Quinn turned off the lantern before I could protest, but it was bright enough from the moonlight to see around after my eyes adjusted. Quinn? I know it's kind of childish, but, I'm a little afraid of the dark. Oh, sorry, I didn't know that. The moon is pretty bright, so I'm mostly okay right now, but I don't know. I'm a little nervous. Could I, Brandon preferred to sleep with the lights off, though on nights I'd spent locked away, he wouldn't argue. With him next to me, the curtains open and a bright moon, the dark wasn't as scary. Could I sleep next to you? Yeah, of course, hon. Come here. I slid over, but to my surprise, Quinn opened his sleeping bag and pulled my body against his, wrapping his arms around me. I was glad it was dark at the moment, so he couldn't see my burning cheeks. You don't have to hold me like this. But what if I want to? Do you want me to stop? I stammered for a few moments before regaining my composure. It's okay. Quinn chuckled softly and relaxed his grip around me. I felt him rest his head against my back with a contented but tired sigh. The day had been long and eventful, and although I felt tired, my mind was still processing everything that happened. Quinn's arm was hanging over my stomach, and I happened to glance down and notice that along the inside of his forearm were over a dozen small, straight scars. I'd never seen Quinn without long sleeves. He must have been hiding the scars from everyone. The scars were familiar. They were similar, too, but smaller than my own scars from my suicide attempts years ago, although mine had been treated by doctors and were barely visible now. I doubted all his scars were failed suicide attempts. Was he hurting himself on purpose? Was that how he dealt with the guilt? I thought about asking him, but his quiet, steady breathing suggested he was already asleep. I didn't want to put him through more terrible memories, and I wasn't sure if I should ask. Some of the scars on his arm looked fresh, as if they occurred in the last few months before I moved in. Eventually, I fell into an uneasy sleep, still unsure what to do. The next day was a flurry of activity. We were up early, while most of the others still slept. Quinn's mother made pancakes and gave Lilith a small gift to wish her happy birthday. We first went to the doctor out of town to renew Lilith's birth control. Quinn signed all the paperwork as Lilith's guardian, even though he wasn't legally, and he paid for the visit out of pocket. Next, we went to a museum that had a special event going on around medical history. Lilith was so absorbed in all the details that it was fun to follow her around and watch her excitement. I tried to get interested in it myself. Since I was going to school to be a doctor, I assumed some of it might be relevant to my future, but nearly everything I saw left me feeling cringy or uncomfortable. We spent over 4 hours there before we left and had a small lunch at a sandwich shop. After that, we went to a rollerblading rink. I had never skated before. Quinn and Lilith were both eager to help me, and after a couple of hours of stumbling and falling on my butt, I was able to skate. We spent a few hours there. By the end, I was sweating. We went back to the house and arrived just before dinner, but Quinn was eager to head home, otherwise we wouldn't get back until past midnight. After saying goodbye, we hit the road. We were both quite tired by the time we returned home. It was past 11 at night as we walked into the apartment building, carrying our overnight bags over our shoulders. There you are, beautiful. Quinn paused just before we reached our door. I looked over his shoulder to see the red-haired regular from the cafe standing one door down. Why, thank you, handsome. Sebastian laughed and approached with a smile. You're not so bad either, Quinn, right? But your hair is different. I've seen you walking her home from the cafe a few times. I'm Sebastian. You know this guy? Yeah, he's a regular at work. Hi, Sebastian. What are you doing here? I just moved in. I guess we're neighbors now. Quinn raised a brow, shifting the bag he carried on his shoulder. In that apartment? I know the people who live there. Are you related? No, I don't know them. The landlord said they moved out in a rush. That's weird. They never mentioned moving. Sebastian shrugged his shoulders and looked over at me. I thought you worked every weekend, darling. I missed you today. I'm guessing you two stay somewhere together? Quinn glared at Sebastian with suspicion, and I noticed what sounded like a hint of jealousy in Sebastian's voice. I assumed I misunderstood. It made no sense for him to be jealous. We'd only spoken a few times. Yeah, we went to visit Quinn's little sister for her birthday. Oh, that's nice. I hope you had fun. It was fun, but it's nearly midnight and we're both exhausted, so good night. Quinn's abrupt cut-off surprised me. He quickly opened the door and stepped inside. Sorry, we are really tired. It was a long drive. I understand completely. You're off tomorrow, yes? I have school. How about we have breakfast together tomorrow before your classes? Or lunch if you prefer, just to get to know each other better, since we're neighbors now. Okay, sure. I'll need all the coffee I can tolerate to stay awake tomorrow. Is 8 o'clock okay? Absolutely. I'll meet you right here, sweetheart. Okay, good night. I wish you'd just piss off. I stepped into the apartment to see Quinn standing in the middle of the living room, looking at me anxiously. Is something wrong? Do you like that guy? Like? I don't really know him. He visits the cafe a lot and seems nice. Why do you ask? Quinn sighed with a shaky breath and rubbed his eyes with his fingertips. Nothing. I'm just really tired. I'm going to bed. Again, thank you for coming with me. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I had fun too. Quinn smiled as he left, but I could see it was forced, and there was some sadness in his eyes. I had no idea if it was because he was exhausted or if there was something else going on. But I was tired too. It was a busy day and a long drive home. I went to bed. Quinn was still asleep when I left that morning to meet Sebastian in the hallway. He was waiting outside and immediately handed me a rose as I greeted him. A beautiful flower for a beautiful lady. Good morning. Go away. So cringy to me. Appearing in everyone else's roots and being cringe. You just get more cringe over time, dude. I stared at him blankly, cautiously accepting the flower. Beautiful lady. Why is he saying that to me? No one but Brandon ever complimented my appearance. I knew I was average at best. Plus, Brandon was biased. Thank you? He chuckled lightly, which just confused me further. What? I can tell from the look on your face that you don't believe me, but you couldn't be more wrong. I find you very attractive. You do? I do. I felt my cheeks burning and I looked away, feeling shy, with no idea how to respond. He chuckled again and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Let's head out. We don't want you to be late for class. Sebastian had a brand new expensive sports car in the parking lot, and he drove us the short distance to Cafe Luna at my request. You see, this would raise so many flags in my mind right away. I'd be like, okay, you instantly latched on to me, and you have a really, really expensive sports car, yet you live in a trash dump. It was close enough I could walk to class, and I already felt so awkward I thought maybe the familiar environment would calm me. One of the girls I knew who worked there greeted us and took our order. Is Julian not working today? He was supposed to, but he was a no-show today. No-show? Oh yeah, you haven't worked here very long. He does it about once a month. He'll just disappear for a couple of days. That household is lucky this place is so desperate for employees, or he'd be fired. Where does Julian go? The girl shrugged as she prepped our drinks. I always suspected he went on a bender or is an addict or something, but who knows? He just tells us to mind our business. There was a line forming behind us, so we took our food and grabbed a small table near the back, away from the crowd. My mind was still wondering about Julian, but Sebastian interrupted my thoughts. Was the birthday party fun? Yeah, Quinn's sister Lilith, she's a teenager. We went to a museum, roller skating, shopping, and a movie. Roller skating, Have you done that before? You know. No, it was my first time. I was a disaster. I would have loved to have been there for that. I've never skated either. Oh, you should try it. It was a lot of fun once I got the hang of it. Perhaps you could teach me sometime. I don't think I'd be a very good teacher. I think I'd learn a lot with a cute teacher like you. Alright, we're gonna end it here and we're just gonna go on to the next one.